Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
You know, Joe, it's that last article about people who try to fool around with Medicaid and all these things you've been doing for so long. If they're not trained in this and if they're not a lawyer, they're really doing things against the law. How did that all come about?
What happened is there had been an entire study done. Lawyers, elder lawyers like myself, encountered situations where people were really being done wrong by people who were non-lawyers who were assisting them with Medicaid. They were totally non-lawyers assisting with Medicaid. And there was even an organization set up nationally, National Medicaid Specialists or something like that. And it's, write a check and you're now a specialist. And I don't know if they had to take a phony baloney test or not, but they were not elder law attorneys. And let's start with a simple premise. To apply for Medicaid, you don't need to be a lawyer. To fill in the application, you can help your mother, you can help your sister, you can help anybody. You can say, look, you're qualified for Medicaid and you can't fill out forms, we'll do it. Many nursing homes do that as a matter of course, because many people who qualify for Medicaid for long-term care obviously are, if you will, pre-qualified. Not in terms of legally did they pre-qualify, but they didn't need any help to manage to preserve assets. They didn't have assets to preserve. When my mother went on Medicaid, my mother didn't have any money. My mother and father were working class, hard-working people, which I refer to as a no-collar. They didn't even have a blue collar. My father had a candy store. My father had a candy store, and he worked from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, 6 days a week, and Sundays closed at 1. So my parents never had the economic wherewithal to put away a buck. They were able to make sufficient funds to provide for themselves, to provide for their children, but their children all worked through college. I went to college and law school at night. So when my mother went on Medicaid, when she ended up in a nursing home, she ended up in a nursing home after her stroke, and she was in New York, and New York had long-term home care, 24-hour care Medicaid. We didn't have to hire a specialist to preserve and protect her assets. We did utilize help to fill out the forms because it was home care Medicaid and we didn't have a nursing home social worker doing it. And you don't need to be a lawyer for that. That's filling out forms, no sophistication. And what I mean by that is you don't need to be a lawyer. You're not giving legal advice. But we've encountered, as elder law attorneys, statewide, a bunch of people who have gone to non-lawyers, and many of whom in their brochures said, we work with elder law attorneys. We do this with elder law attorneys, but they say, come to us. And they have hoodwinked many people into believing that they're okay to do this stuff, that it's routine, that they can do it. But they were ending up giving legal advice. They were writing contracts. They were preparing trusts. And sometimes they said they were doing with it a lawyer, and there may have been a lawyer doing the stuff, but the clients never met the lawyer. The clients never got the legal advice. So, for example, one of the things that one can do to spend down somebody's money is hire somebody under a contract, a personal services contract, a caregiver contract, to care for somebody, even if they're in the nursing home, because you and I both know if mom's in a nursing home and the daughter's here, she's going to spend 25 hours a week doing the mom job. She's going to be at that nursing home. She's going to be talking to doctors. She's going to be communicating with relatives. She's going to be running and making sure mom's okay, and she's going to check on mom's condo to make sure it's not falling apart. And most children would do it as a labor of love, as I'm sure everybody would. But the law says you can prepay that child those monies, and you can pay the child for that service, and we'll just say $20 an hour for the 24-hour week. That's $500 a week. That's $26,000 a year. And if mom has a life expectancy of 3 years, she can prepay you $75,000, and you are now hired, and mom is now broke if that's all she had, and you can get Medicaid. Well, these people would say, if you just do this, mom can get Medicaid, and the people would do it. Well, nobody told them that $75,000 was income taxable, which it is. It's called, you're being paid to do a service. That's called income, right? And it's going to increase, you're going to have to pay self-employment tax and income tax on that. So some of the people didn't even know they were committing a crime by not reporting the income. Some of the people found out that and remember, some of the people didn't know if they were older that it was going to increase their premium for their own Medicare B, because if you make more than a certain amount of money, your Medicare B goes up. They didn't know if they were on if mom died in 6 weeks and you would have only paid the nursing home maybe $9,000, now you're going to pay Uncle Sam $30,000 income tax. And they didn't understand the concept of the contract. They didn't understand that. And they were entering into legal contracts. They were also not always given the best advice, because I had somebody who was told to sign a contract like that, exactly like that. Number one, he was on Social Security disability. Number two, and he was the son. Number two, transfers to a disabled child, even if the disabled child is Ross Perot, is an exempt transfer for Medicaid. You can give your disabled child $2 million, and it would be a tax-free advantage. Just do it. There's no waiting period. There's no penalty. There's no tax. Go do it. So sometimes they were giving advice that was contrary to the best advice, including sometimes my best advice is do nothing. Your loved one has weeks or months to live, and the negative side effects will be X, Y, Z. Well, anyway, there were so many complaints that we were getting as lawyers that the elder law section reported it to the bar's unlicensed practice of law session and said, look, these people are doing things that are the practice of law, and we're getting these problems that people are encountering that they're coming in with. That was finally brought before the Supreme Court of the state of Florida, and the Supreme Court analyzed and studied the whole thing, and they said, this is, if you are engaging in giving legal advice, or if you are preparing trust, if you are preparing contracts like this, you are in the unlicensed practice of law, and that is a felony. And that doesn't mean if you're broke, they can't fill out the form for you, but they can't give legal advice. And if you say you're working with the lawyers, in order for the lawyer to be a right deal, the lawyer has to be meeting with the client and has to write a separate check to the lawyer. Don't write the check to the company and assume that the lawyer's there, and that the lawyers who are doing this have an ethical obligation not to prepare contracts for a company, but meet with the people and explain. What a lawyer should do is explain. Now, this is not about the Supreme Court protecting lawyers. This really was about protecting people, because there are things that are legal things that the Supreme Court has approved that you might think are lawyering that can't be done. For example, everybody here knows that if you go to a real estate broker, he will prepare or she will prepare a real estate contract to sell your home, right?
Absolutely.
That's a contract. Why is the Supreme Court not coming down on that? Well, because we have professionals who are knowledgeable in the area of what they are doing, that have their own licenses and own licensure, and it's a limited specialty, and they're allowed to do it. So this is not about protecting lawyers. It's about protecting the public. And it's a third-degree felony. And now that means a couple of things. One, the person who's doing the filling out of the form, that's one thing. But the person who's preparing the contract, giving the legal advice, or just saying, this is what you have to do in order to legally impoverish yourself, is in fact giving legal advice. And That's the practice of law, whether they're being paid for it or not. The other implications of this are, as we can all imagine, but we don't always think about it, well, what about the nursing home who says, why don't you go see Charlie? He does Medicaid planning for people all the time. He used to work for the Department of Children and Family Services. Well, that nursing home is now aiding and abetting in the commission of the crime, aren't they?
Well,
they're telling you where to go. Just like if you said, oh, you want to kill your husband? Here, there's this guy on the corner of Palmetto and US 1 who kills people. Go look him up. But that's aiding and abetting. If I tell you where to go to get the gunman, I'm now facilitating the commission of a crime. So everybody ought to beware. And it's not about helping lawyers. It's about helping people. And you may have listeners who say, well, my neighbor used the guy that the assisted living or nursing home recommended, and he was much cheaper than a lawyer. And he got my neighbor's husband Medicaid, so I don't understand it. Well, there's two things. One, that doesn't mean that they did the best method possible. It doesn't mean it means they got legal advice from a non-lawyer. And it also means that doesn't mean for everybody else that person will do it right. Some people are plain vanilla. I mean, we've heard about people who practice the unlicensed practice of medicine, and some of them know what they're doing with regard to certain things. Who here would go for medical treatment to a non-medical doctor or DO? They're going to go to somebody who knows and is licensed to practice in that area. That doesn't mean that sometimes if you go to somebody else, they can't do it right. It means you're taking a grave risk and they are practicing medicine. Even when they are not harming the patient, they are violating the law. So it's really about getting it done right, getting it done wisely, and getting it done intelligently. And the Supreme Court based this not on just theoretical stuff, but there were tons of case studies put in front of them of the problems that occurred. Now, I can tell you myself that I've never had a client willing to get me to submit that to the bar for the unlicensed practice of law, but I have seen numerous cases of this type of behavior and both wrong information, false information, and not the best advice being given to people all the time. And I don't want to exaggerate by all the time. I see a half a dozen cases a year where people come in and some of them didn't hire the person. Some of them didn't hire the person because they start to come in and they appear a little more knowledgeable. Well, I was thinking about entering into a contract to be hired by my mother as a caregiver. What do you think about that? And I said, well, it's something to be considered. Let's talk about the income tax consequences about that. And they say, income tax consequences? I said, didn't you just say you were going to be hired to perform services? What do you think the IRS says when you are hired to perform services and you are paid money? Do you think they think that's a gift? Because if it's a gift, then you have to report it as a gift to Medicaid, and that creates an ineligibility process. You cannot lie. You can't do things like that.
Wow. You have to take a breath, Joe. You have to take a breath.
It just absolutely...
No, I know.
All I'm saying is...
I know.
I listen to Dr. Mencia.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
I don't listen long enough because my radio doesn't pick up 740 and I'm not going to sit at the computer. So I have to only listen when I'm on the phone.
Oh, sorry.
And his logic, his integrity, his go to see the people who know what they're doing.
Right.
Makes sense. Go to people who have your best interest at heart. Go to people who are also, by the way, and even though he doesn't say it, accountable for their licensure, and there are boards modifying their stuff. You go there, and he doesn't say, if you got a skin problem, if the podiatrist is available that day, he'll see you. He doesn't say that. He says, you're going to see our dermatologist. You're going to be referred to one. Go where you got to go for the expertise. And sometimes if you pay, I had a client give me a great line once. I said, and I'm middle of the road in terms of pricing, but I said, I'm not the cheapest lawyer in town. You know what his line to me was, and I've never forgotten it? He said, I can't afford the cheapest lawyer in town.
I love it. That's a good one.
So you can't afford to go to the cheapest place to preserve your assets.
Well,
okay. If you want the cheapest financial advice, put all your money in a CD. If you want to get 0.2% on your money, you got to sometimes get some financial advice and pay a decent financial advisor.
So let me just tell everybody who you've been listening to. If you just tuned in, take a deep breath, Joe, and let me explain who you are. I know you are. You could go on. This is Joe Karp, and Joe Karp is the founder of the Karp Law Firm, and he has been working in this field for many, many years. He's one of the few elder law attorneys in the country. There aren't a lot of them, but they really do enjoy what they do. They're very smart. They learn everything they can. They're there to help their clients. And let me give you a phone number if you do need to call there for information as to how to get to see him. It's toll-free 800-893-9911. That's 800-893-9911. And, of course, and then you can go to the karplaw.com website, which is KARPLAW.com, and you'll be able to see when their seminars are. You'll be able to learn lots of things. He has a great blog. He's really right there. And it's funny, I knew you when, just like you knew me when. It's so great to see someone who has done so well because you've done everything with integrity and intelligence and care. And that's what I love about you mostly. Besides, you're cute. But besides that, let's talk about your seminars coming up. Now, you have some coming up right now in May.
May, if you want me to tell them,
why don't you do that?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Tuesday, May 12th is in Port St. Lucie at the Port St. Lucie Holiday Inn. It starts at 1:30 in the afternoon, goes till about 4. Now, I don't do that workshop. Jenny Bernstein, who's a board-certified attorney with my office, she's also a certified elder law attorney, as I am, and she will be doing that as she's been doing it for years. On Wednesday, May 13th, at 1:30 to 4, I do it in Boynton Beach at the Courtyard by Marriott. That's on Congress Avenue between Gateway and Boynton Beach Boulevard. That starts at 1:30, and we go through till 4. And then on Thursday, May 14th, we do it at the Palm Beach Gardens Marriott, just off PGA Boulevard, just east of 95 at RCA Boulevard. Palm Beach Gardens Marriott, again at 1:30 to 4. They're open to the public. We talk about estate planning. We talk about estate taxes. We talk about how to protect money for long-term care. We talk about how to get Medicaid benefits for long-term care. We talk about eligibility for veterans benefits in order to assist with either home care or assisted living. Anybody who attends, if we believe we can help you, will be entitled to a free consultation with one of our lawyers. We have 6 lawyers altogether now. This is all we do is estate planning and elder law. We have 3 offices, Palm Beach Gardens, Boynton Beach, and Port St. Lucie. We meet everybody by appointment, and if we can help you, we will give you a free 1-hour consultation to see what we can do. Many of the people who come to us already have existing estate plans or trusts, but at the workshop they learn so much more to see if their trusts are still viable, if they make sense under the current tax laws, whether they need to start to do some planning for long-term care. So it's a critical opportunity for people. People who don't want to go to the seminar can call up for an appointment, but it won't be a free appointment. It'll be a $400 consultation. So you can get some value by going there. You'll learn a whole bunch of stuff. You'll also have an opportunity to see us, ask some questions at the workshop, but not many, but you'll get that free consultation.
So, Joe, I have a question. Without going to your seminar, I'd like you to answer. When someone passes away, how does Social Security know and they stop the payment?
Okay. There's no microchip in your body. What happens is in 99.9% of the cases, in fact, in every case I've ever encountered, and I'll tell you the only one I can think of that you wouldn't encounter, the funeral home automatically notifies them. That's part of what the funeral homes do is their automatic process. So they notify them. I guess if you fell into the Bermuda Triangle and they couldn't find your body, somebody would have to notify them because there's no funeral home involved. But the funeral homes do that. We have the information on how to do that, but our clients have never had to have us do that or do it themselves. And they know automatically also if the person is married, so if somebody is married and their spouse dies, the surviving spouse is entitled to the larger of the two Social Securities, and they will automatically increase the surviving spouse's Social Security to the deceased spouse if it's higher, and they'll also send a modest check. I think it's $255 or $155, I forget the amount, towards the cost of the funeral if there's a surviving spouse. But the homes do that.
All right, another question about this. So let's say that a person dies on the 15th. Do you have to refund the money?
They grab it. Yes, they do.
How do they do that?
Everything is direct deposited, so they pull it back out.
Oh, so what if they die on the 25th?
My understanding is if you don't live, that you're paid in advance and you got to live the whole month.
Or they take out prorated amount?
No.
What do you mean, no? In other words, that
they
month...
take out the whole thing. If you
You're
live 29
kidding.
out of 30 days, my understanding is Social Security pulls out the whole month.
Really? Do you think that's fair?
Because you're paid in advance.
Well, that's not fair.
Well, they could say they're going to pay you retroactively, so people are glad if you turn 66 in January and you get that check in January, you don't say, well, you're paying me in advance. You don't say, right? I have employees, you have employees. When do you pay them? Do you pay them a week in advance or a week after they've earned the money?
After they've earned the money.
Okay, so they're saying you don't earn the money until you live the month.
Okay.
They're paying it in advance, so they're grabbing it back.
All right, so now let's, there's some other questions about Social Security. A lot of people have been asking me these, and I don't have any of these answers, but if someone is, they're now 66 and they're waiting, and I have had someone in Social Security on my show that said that if you can wait until you're 70, you get so much more money. Do you know much about that?
I know a significant round about that. If you wait until what happens is at 66 is your key number. That's your optimum number. And let's just say at 66 you're entitled to $2,000 a month. If you want to take it at 62, there's a reduction for every year earlier. And that reduction, I believe, and don't hold me to the percentage, is about 8% per annum. So that instead, if we were to take 160 times, because that's 8% of 2,000, you'd end up with like $1,500 a month or $1,600 a month if you took it at 62, and that would continue. But if you wait until you're 70, you get 16% higher, so that if you're 66 and it's 2,000, and again, I'm not doing the compounding or the changes with the cost of living. If you waited until you were 70, you would get an extra $160 a year times 4, so that's another $640. So you get $2,640, and that's an important thing to know about and figure on. Now, there's some other tricks that people should know. For example, let us just say, and I have a separate financial company that we don't push much or talk about much, and someday I'll talk about it more, where we do some advice for people with regard to that, because my law firm doesn't get involved in Social Security, but it really does involve retirement economic planning, where suppose you're 66 and your husband is 68, and you're entitled to $2,000 and he's entitled to $3,000 already. Let's just assume he's taking the $3,000, or he's 71, he's taking the $3,000. What you can do at 66 is not claim your Social Security. Claim your spousal entitlement to one half of your husband's. So they'll give you $1,500 a month from his Social Security. Then you wait till you're 70, and then you say, I'm switching, I'm going to my Social Security. So at 70, you would then say, now I'm entitled to my Social Security, which was the $2,000 plus the $160 a year for 4 years. So now I'm going to take my $2,600 a month. And you can do that.
Wow.
So those are things that people have to learn. For example, I will not take my Social Security until I'm 70 because there are a couple of planning reasons for that. Number one, because I'll be working, etc., I don't want to have to pay as much tax as I would on my Social Security.
Right. Well, I wish
I'm working. But more importantly, my income is higher than my wife's. When I die, remember what I said.
Yeah.
I'm assuming I'll predecease Debbie because I couldn't live without her. So if I predecease Debbie, she gets the higher of the two Social Securities. So rather than have us both get it when we're 66 and me get a lower number, recognizing that my trophy beautiful bride of 37 years will live a long time after me, I want her to get the highest Social Security possible.
We're over,
so I want
Joe.
to get the
Sorry.
number that I would get when I'm 70.
We had to cut you off. So happy Mother's Day to Debbie, and thank you, Joe, so much.
Okay, see you at the workshops, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.